Frequently ignored traffic laws and road regulations, Part 1. This video covers a variety of important traffic laws that all drivers should be aware of, even if they may not be as regularly applicable as speed limits, right-of-way restrictions, and other laws you must follow on a daily basis. You could unintentionally violate a traffic law without even being aware of it if you are not familiar with the regulations in your state about leaving children unattended in a car, transporting passengers in trailers, or how much goods you are allowed to carry. Leaving kids in a vehicle. There is no federal law specifying the minimum age of a child who can be left in an unattended car or the conditions under which it is acceptable. Drivers need to be aware that leaving an unattended youngster in a vehicle is risky and is thus prohibited in many states. A child cannot be left in a moving car for more than 5 or 10 minutes in some jurisdictions, but it is prohibited in other ones. In different parts of the United States, a kid may not be left in an unsupervised vehicle until a different age. Most legal provisions concern children less than 6. For information relevant to your area, consult the DMV website and the Child Passenger Laws section of your state's own driving manual. Anyone in charge of a child who is found to have broken the legislation regarding unaccompanied minors in automobiles will be fined. You could face a criminal trial if your activities cause the child to be in any danger or suffer harm. The following are a few instances of unsupervised children in automobiles statutes from various states in the U.S. In California, children under the age of 6 may never be left alone in a moving vehicle unless they are being watched over by an adult who is at least 12 years old. Illinois, children under the age of 5 may not be left in a moving vehicle unattended for more than 10 minutes unless they are being watched by an adult who is at least 14 years old. In Maryland, it is against the law to leave young children alone in a closed vehicle for any period of time unless they are being watched over by an adult who is at least 13 years old. Texas prohibits leaving young children in a car unsupervised for longer than 5 minutes. There is no provision for older children to supervise. Other states, such as Missouri, Michigan, and Kentucky, do not have laws that expressly forbid leaving kids in cars. If the child is endangered in any way, it is not allowed. For illustration, if the environment poses a serious threat to the child's safety, for example extreme heat or cold, you either left the keys in the ignition or the car's engine is running. The car is in an unsafe location or is parked in an unsafe position. Always remember to verify your state's regulations regarding unattended children, and never ever leave a child in a car if doing so puts them in danger. Loading your vehicle. Certain states have regulations that are specific to size restrictions for what a truck can transport, relative to the size of the vehicle. How cargo must be protected during transportation. In California, for instance, it is illegal to carry anything inside or on top of a car that extends beyond the fenders on the left or the right by more than 6 inches. To ensure that you do not inadvertently break the law by acting in a way you think is safe, it is crucial to check out loading in your state's driving manual. Driving any vehicle that is overcrowded or laden in such a way that you cannot drive safely would be against the law, regardless of whether your state has rules particularly governing cargo or not. Blocking the driver's line of sight. If any cargo or passengers are obstructing the driver's view of the road, a vehicle is said to be laden so that it cannot be driven safely. Vehicles cannot be so fully occupied with people or things that the driver cannot see well enough to control the vehicle. Most states have some sort of application for this statute. A requirement that is found in many states is that cargo cannot impair the driver's ability to manage the vehicle. For instance, it would be illegal to place a passenger or object in the way that prevents the driver from quickly reaching the gear stick. Caravan-related driving. In general, drivers are not allowed to participate in motorcades or caravans because they risk leaving insufficient distance between their vehicles. According to Georgian legislation, drivers of trucks and vehicles pulling trailers must give enough area between their vehicles and other comparable ones so that other road users have room to pass. Since it is frequently impossible to allow an overtaking gap between vehicles when driving on business and residential highways, this particular legislation only applies when driving outside of business or residential districts. Check your driver's manual to see if your state has a law that is comparable to the one described above about caravans. Additionally, any trailers that are being hauled by automobiles must fit within a specified size restriction. Trailers wider than 8 feet, 6 inches are not permitted to travel on Georgian highways. Trailers carrying passengers. The majority of states forbid passengers from traveling in any trailer that is drawn by a vehicle. as passengers would not have access to officially approved restraints like seatbelts. Riding in a trailer is against the law and risky. Sometimes there are exceptions to these laws. On farmland or private property, for example, it can be acceptable to travel in a trailer. The rules governing people traveling in recreational campers and similar trailers vary greatly from state to state. Travel trailers, truck campers, and fifth-wheel trailers are frequently distinguished from one another. Before transporting passengers, it is best to confirm these regulations with the relevant state body. Frequently ignored traffic laws and road regulations, Part 2. Riding in a pickup truck's bed. In general, people are not allowed to ride in the bed or cargo area of pickup trucks unless those vehicles are equipped with passenger restraints that have received federal approval. There are typically exceptions to the rule. For example, in Texas, passengers are permitted to ride in a pickup truck's bed on beaches, private property, farmland, and farm-to-market roads. It is against the law for drivers to let passengers travel in the trunk. Except in cases of emergency, most jurisdictions forbid passengers from riding in or on any area of a vehicle that is not intended particularly to transport people. Driving along mountain roads and across canyons. In order to ensure safety, many jurisdictions have traffic laws that specify how drivers must maneuver on mountain roads or through valleys. Before driving in any mountainous area, make sure you are familiar with these regulations. According to Georgian law, cars must stay as near to the right-hand edge of the road as possible when traveling through gorges, defiles, and mountain roads. The driver is legally compelled to honk their horn ahead of any curves where any portion of the vehicle will encroach on the left-hand side of the road. Additionally, several states require the use of headlights when approaching blind turns on mountain highways. Leaving the gas station without paying. There are no exceptions to this rule. It is against the law to leave the grounds of a gas station without paying for the gas you have already topped up. Anyone discovered in violation of this law will face a fine, a jail sentence, or both. Although this regulation is universally applicable, there are regional variations in the penalties for leaving without paying for fuel. Check your driver's manual and driver's education materials for local information. Leaving animals behind. Every state considers animal abandonment or dumping on or next to a roadway to be serious crimes that amount to cruelty. The penalties for abandoning an animal vary from state to state, as they do with most legislation. Anyone found guilty of this infraction faces a hefty fine, up to $1,000 in California, and, depending on how serious the offense was, could also face a period of time in county jail. School performance and routine absences. As of 2018, 29 states have regulations that tie teen drivers' licenses to academic achievement and absence from school. According to California and Wisconsin law, children between the ages of 13 and 18 who are found guilty of repeated school absences may have their driving privileges suspended. Children who aren't yet old enough to have a permit might wait till they are to get one. Other states, including Kansas and Oregon, provide the DMV the authority to revoke a student's driving privileges if the school's principal reports that the student has violated behavioral norms. For most states, a high school diploma, or an equivalent certification, or enrollment in school are prerequisites for a teen to be eligible for a driver's license. Firearm convictions for minors. Any youngster who is discovered and found guilty of using a firearm improperly would probably suffer a delay, suspension, or revocation of their driving rights as a result. In California, teenagers found guilty of possessing a firearm illegally face up to a 5-year license suspension. If found guilty of vandalism, minors who are 13 years old or older risk losing their driving privileges or having the issue of their driving license postponed. Any form of graffiti falls under this. This law is broadly applicable, although it could not be applicable in every state, just like the penalties for illegal firearm use. Theft and illegally obtaining or operating a vehicle. It's against the law to take or operate a car that doesn't belong to you without the owner's permission. Even if you don't want to steal the car, this is still true. Depending on why the vehicle was taken or driven, if property damage or injuries occurred, and which state the violation occurred in, a motorist may face a variety of penalties for breaking this statute. In California, those found guilty of this crime face up to a $5,000 fine, up to a year in jail, or both penalties. The consequences for seizing or operating an emergency response vehicle or law enforcement vehicle without authorization are, as you might expect, much more severe. This would be deemed a felony in the majority of states. Every state has laws prohibiting littering, while the specifics of those laws and the penalties for breaking them can vary. All motorists are required to consult the material on littering rules in their driver's manual. The majority of state littering laws prohibit throwing litter, including cigarettes, cigars, and other flammable items, from moving vehicles. Any and all materials that have been discarded are referred to as litter, including garbage, waste, empty food cartons, construction debris, and dead animals. Additionally, it is prohibited to leave trash on or near a roadway. Be sure to understand the law. When you take your first test for a learner's permit and later, when you start learning to drive, you will require a lot of the knowledge that is provided in this video. It's crucial to keep in mind that different states' traffic rules are frequently comparable but not always the same. You must research state-specific regulations and laws in your official driving manual and driver's ed materials in addition to going over the information we give. It is the individual obligation of every driver to be aware of and follow the traffic laws. This includes being aware of the regulations if you visit another state. It's unlikely that you will get off the hook if the law enforcement officer pulls you over for breaking the law on a road if you say you weren't aware you were breaking the law. Keep in mind that the purpose of the regulations of the road is to keep you safe. They are rigidly followed as a result.